Reports have broken over an hour ago that Masai Ujiri is out in Toronto, obviously with the ownership change with Rogers, MLSE, Larry Tannenbaum being out, with the noted and rumored friction between Masai Ujiri historically and Ed Rogers. The writing was somewhat on the wall, but I guess we just decided to live in Fantasyland until we couldn't, and the Doug Smith bomb broke. The Shams bomb broke. Masai Ujiri is gone. Where will he go? Probably Atlanta, maybe. We'll see. What does this mean for the Toronto Raptors going forward? This is probably very, very, very bitter for a lot of people. Probably something that is going to make you worry a lot. Maybe something that makes you wonder about the future of Scottie Barnes. Maybe something that makes you wonder about the future of Bobby Webster, Dan Tolzman, Darko Rajakovic. What would a new president do with these figureheads when the last 2 years have gone the way they've gone? Will they appreciate the Darko ball? Will they appreciate the ball movement and the philosophy? Will they even be a basketball guy? Or are they going to be just another Rob Babcock type? Are they going to be the cheapest guy that we can find because Rogers' finances are not in the best position right now? Will Bobby Webster be allowed to stay on and sort of steer the ship? Will Dan Tolzman still have a place, in the decisions? How much of what just happened today influenced what happened over the last 2 days when the Raptors went against my board and decided to draft who they drafted? Were these Bobby guys? There's a lot of questions, I think, and not a lot of answers right now, but I understand if you're worried. I certainly understand if you woke up this morning and just said, "Oh, no." Well, I'm going to give you a 20-minute foray into my mind on this. This is not going to be a super long live. I have to be on the panel. I'm supposed to be on the panel at 11 o'clock. I'm assuming right now I'm being announced as most obnoxious and biggest yapper, whatever. So maybe this is a nice, sort of gift to me to have to avoid that. But look, I announced yesterday, sorry, at 5 a.m. So I found out about this a little bit before uh, last night, and I made a public post on Twitter and said that I'll be covering the San Antonio Spurs next year on a second channel. I'll still be covering the Raptors. Don't you worry, not going anywhere. Scottie Barnes, Jacoby Walter, some of my favorite players in the league, Brandon Ingram. So I'm looking forward to what the Raptors do next year. But I will be, doing that as well. And yeah, just I was kind of on the fence about it yesterday because I was hearing some rumors, and then last night when I heard this, I was just like, yeah, I think, yeah. I posted this video of Brian Wright, who is one of my favorite general managers in the league, talking about Carter Bryant and how they were trying to trade up to get him, and apparently they had him as 7 on their board. And I just remembered, I'm like, man, it was Masai who used to have guys like Carter Bryant 6 or 7 on this board. I don't know. The last 2 days have been very conflicting for me, man. I'm be honest. The last 5 years have been very conflicting for me. So what we'll say is we'll treat this like a burger, right? We'll leave the meat for the middle, and we'll add the fluff to the bottom and the top. The fluff, but it's very important fluff, is that the Toronto Raptors historically have not had stability. Masai Ujiri provides that. They've not usually had a long-term vision. Masai Ujiri provided that. When you talk to players, scouts, anybody around the league, he is the first name that comes up as, well, at least you got him. And I understand that. There is a fear because of what happened pre Masai that maybe what happened pre Masai is what's going to happen post Masai. I mean, shoot, some of us are still, young enough to remember or old enough to remember the era of Rob Babcock. Like, we remember that. Rafael LaRusso, 8th overall pick. I remember that. That was heartbreaking. It was a heartbreaking time to be a Raptors fan. And while there was some excitement over, hiring the executive of the year and Brian Colangelo, who ironically brought Masai Ujiri to Toronto, ironically, after he was leaving, recommended Masai Ujiri to Larry Tannenbaum as his replacement. So, shout outs to Brian Colangelo, one of the most maligned figures in Toronto sports history. I do have to say there is a fear that Rogers is not a company to be trusted. And I don't trust them. I don't trust them at all. At all. app can't stand this company. Can't stand this company. Can't stand that blowhard up top. Can't stand their decisions. They are a they're kerosene. So maybe you look at this and you say, is there maybe an ownership group out there that with good intentions that's willing to go buy the Raptors for $4 or $5 million? Maybe that'll happen in a couple of years. But all of this shakeup usually results in instability. What happens when new owners typically take over is they make big, impulsive, loud, look at me moves. Matt Ishbia in Phoenix, short sighted moves. So right now, this is not what you need going into an off season. This is not what you need if you're Scottie Barnes preparing on your jump shot and Brandon Ingram, who came here. But knowing Masai, a little bit and understanding, his sort of structure, I'm sure that he would have briefed everybody on this being a possibility for a while. This was not something that was handled, and Rodgers was not going to go into next year with a lame duck president. That was not going to happen because naturally he'll be looking at his next job. He'll be negotiating from his former job. It's a really weird position to put him into. And it's a weird position to put himself into. And for them, it's a weird position to put themselves into. So yeah, I'm trying to keep my thoughts coherent. I haven't had my morning coffee yet, and I do want to get out of here, at 11:22, so I can just make my coffee before I end up on the panel, and probably going to be discussing this on the panel as well on Player's Choice. But I want to just, speak directly to what he's meant to me in terms of listening to him. I've attended lectures with him. I've read a lot of quotes from him. I've watched every presser he's done, and every single time I've sort of come back to core values: integrity, moving with integrity, moving with purpose, moving from your heart, leading from your heart. These are all very important things, and I've taken them to heart. And I think, just personally to me, Masai has made me a better leader. I think watching him has made me a better person and a better leader. And when I talk to people who know him closely and have worked with him, come up with him, guys like Joe Tuomo, but also other scouts and people that were in the scouting circles with him, they always speak to the gravity that he carried as a human being. That's something I definitely felt. So this is a guy who's made a lot of really good decisions for the Toronto Raptors. He has been a stabilizing force. He has sort of prevented them from completely making idiotic moves. He's done a great job building a championship team. He's made smart decisions in the draft. And again, there's always that echo chain. There's always that echo of winning. We're going to win here. That belief. You need that in your leadership. I've always believed that the tone of leadership sets the marching orders for those who follow. And I think Scottie and Fred and the success that they enjoy as human beings, they're also around this guy every day. There's an amplifying force to to a dude who has this much gravity as a human being, that when he comes into the room and he says, we are doing this and we are doing that you sort of believe him. There's a ease when you're a player to know that you're in good hands, that you're not going to be misled, that you're going to be negotiated with fairly. I think the Raptors have developed a great reputation around the league, a reputation, frankly, that the Bucks don't have, the Suns don't have. What the Suns just tried to do under Matt Ishbia and their leadership to Kevin Durant. Other players noticed that. The Raptors have increasingly become a place that people want to come to. And it's not just Drake. It's not just Scottie or the championship. It's Masai. And that reputation carries through agents, and agents talk to their players. Oh, you're in a good place. When Colin Murray Boyles hears, I'm going to Toronto, and his agent says, that's a terrible place, he comes in with a bad attitude. He comes in mistrustful. He comes in, not knowing who his coach is going to be. I think the most important thing Masai Ujiri has provided is stability. So that's the piece that I'll say is the good thing. Talk about the bad thing. I've been very, very critical of Masai Ujiri's overall inability to detach his emotions from logic. You know that this channel was launched primarily to criticize the Toronto Raptors' decision making. It was really critical of them for not moving off of Pascal when it was obvious. It was critical of them for not moving off of Fred and taking what they could when it was obvious. It was critical of them for trading for Jakob Poeltl when there was no business trading for those picks. And yesterday we saw the final of those 3 picks go off the board at 37, when Maxime Renault could have been picked, and we don't know what could have been added. I have to tell you, if you're evaluating this team from the perspective of team performance since 2019, this has been awful. Aaron Baines, Stanley Johnson, these are uninnovative, poorly thought out moves. You can blame the bubble, you can blame Tampa, you can blame whatever you want. You can blame Pascal for not playing basketball for 4 months. You can blame Scottie for regressing as a jump shooter in his second year. You can blame Fred for being selfish. You can blame Nick Nurse for being toxic, but ultimately these things don't happen under Masai previously. Why did they happen now? It's always difficult, I have to say, to isolate value. I say this as a basketball, channel that covers basketball team, that sometimes you don't know what the value of a Kyle Lowry is on the court until you lose Kyle Lowry. It's interesting. You may not actually know the value of a Dwayne Casey and a Kyle Lowry until you lose them off the court too. I think Kyle was a huge part. I'll remind you that Masai Ujiri came here looking to tank. He didn't have a draft pick in that first draft, which would have resulted in Giannis Antetokounmpo, which probably would have changed the entire trajectory. And every single time I think about how great Masai is, I always say he's the guy that spotted Giannis. He's the guy that spotted Shea. He's also the guy that didn't trade for Giannis and Shea, right? He's also the guy that wasn't willing to go. I mean, honestly, we're cooking right now. The Pelicans, we're like, the Pelicans are so stupid for trading Derek Queen. Well, if Derek Queen actually turns into Giannis Antetokounmpo, then history will write a very different story about them, right? Masai knew who Giannis was and some idea of what he was going to be. He didn't want to be unsensible. So here's the thing. We've never made that catastrophic move that everyone laughs at. We've never made that. We've never made the 6 first-round picks unprotected for Kevin Durant. We've never done that. We've never traded 3 first-round picks for an aging star. We never did those moves under Masai. What we did do is probably 100 small, stupid moves that go under the radar. Kem Birch, 3-year, $18 million. Who are you competing against? Trading Norman Powell to get Gary Trent, who was a worse player, and then signing him to an identical deal, which was actually worse because Norman Powell was under team control for 5 years, and Gary Trent Jr. got a player option for some reason, which he double opted to. It was stupid. It was who were we negotiating against? Losing OG Anunoby because we underpaid him and then we couldn't pay him fairly and we didn't properly. That's a guy who loved Toronto. He wanted to be here and he's valuable. Look, we didn't get enough for Pascal. I think that's the saddest part about watching him do what he did this year with the Indiana Pacers is we're watching teams get 4 first-round picks for Desmond Bane. Why couldn't we get more for Pascal? These are all these small moves that you just sort of, let's just say, you ever see Chinese water torture? I think it's called Chinese water torture, where they just drop a freaking drop of water on your head for like hours, and it's supposed to be, I think that's what it's called. I could be mistaken. I'm sort of sleepy this morning. Yeah, it's not a flood, but it's annoying as hell. And I feel like watching the Raptors operate their books, sign extensions, they always overpay, they always add a player option. I'll remind you, this is a team that signed Dennis Schroeder to a full mid-level, which was probably his best option out there, 2-year mid-level, traded him at the deadline because they pivoted. They got nothing back for him. And the team that traded for him, which is the Brooklyn Nets, got 3 second-round picks. Would you have been happy with 3 second-round picks or no second-round picks? Ask yourself. This is the asset value. Kem Birch, you signed him to a 3-year, $18 million deal. He is an albatross. The second he signs that contract, I was screaming from the top of the, why? What the hell? Who are we competing against? Oh, no, we'll pay a EuroLeague center $18 million. Maybe he'll be better because he gets more money. When has that ever worked out? No, that's not how that works. Gary Trent Jr. played better for the Bucks in the playoffs than he did for us. He was on a minimum contract. More money does not mean someone's going to play better. That was stupid. These were stupid deals. Signing Kelly Olynyk was a stupid deal. Trading for Bruce Brown and then not being able to extract any sort of value for him until it was like right at the extension deadline was a stupid deal. You can sit here and say, oh, well, we got Brandon Ingram. I was happy we got Brandon Ingram. Brandon Ingram is vastly preferable to just holding on to Kelly Olynyk and letting Bruce Brown expire. Maybe that first round pick wasn't as valuable as I thought it was going to be before Tyrese Halliburton's injury. But let's be real. Brandon Ingram had very little value to no value out there, and he preferred to be here. He pushed his way here. That Atlanta offer was terrible. They were negotiating against themselves. I look at moves like this. I look at the return on Siakam. I look at the signing of the Kelly Olynyk. I look at the terrible contracts. I look at the DeMar Carroll thing, and I'm reminded this team wasn't supposed to be good. We the North happened on accident. You say Kyle Lowry is the greatest Raptor of all time. I say this is a guy who Masai Ujiri nearly traded. James Dolan saved you. James Dolan said, I'm not negotiating with Masai Ujiri. I'm not negotiating with the Raptors after I got cooked on that Andrea Bargnani deal. I'm not going to lose this. The word of the deal leaks. He's getting destroyed for giving out multiple picks for Kyle Lowry. He decides to back out of the deal last second, which starts a decade-long war with Masai Ujiri, which culminates in a lawsuit. And it's interesting. How different would this have gone with Iman Shumpert? You know what I mean? Think about it. Because We the North doesn't happen without Kyle Lowry. That championship doesn't happen without Kyle Lowry. That was an accident. DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry looked at each other and said, fuck this guy. We're gonna start winning games. We don't know how long we're gonna be together. Let's just go start winning games. They dumped Rudy Gay for players they thought were gonna make them worse. Gravis Vasquez, Patrick Patterson, utility guys. They took a salary dump. They said, who you got? Joe? Billy? Cool. We'll take them. How are their contracts? Short? Cool. They come here, perfect cocktail. You fell ass backwards into a playoff team. You kept it running. Was it too long? Casey should have been fired before. DeMar could have been traded before, blah, 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 blah. And then you fall ass backwards into the Kawhi Leonard deal. They, inexplicably, for some reason, prior to, regaining their composure, needed a star back. And they were petty enough to not want to send Kawhi. You needed so many things to go right for you. Do you understand how many things had to go right for you for this championship thing to happen? They had to be petty enough to not want to trade him to LA. He had to be petty enough to tell every other team that he wasn't going to re-sign. You had to have a general manager at the time of Bobby Webster who had a personal relationship from his days of the league office with their guy, and the deal fell apart. And that's when Masai Ujiri went to DeMar DeRozan and said, you're not getting traded. And then Bobby Webster and Brian Wright got into the call and made the deal happen when Masai Ujiri was on a trip. And they let Masai Ujiri know, like, are you okay with this? This is what we're giving up. We're giving up Jakob Poeltl, DeMar DeRozan, and I think it was 2 first-round picks. Or a first-round pick for Danny Green and Kawhi Leonard. And Masai said, do it. But don't lose the plot here. Masai was emotional. And you know what's funny? You learn a lot from your heroes about what to do, but you also should learn what not to do. I've had a lot of heroes in my life. They may be politicians, athletes. Maybe that's kind of what growing up without a dad or permanent father figure. My dad passed very early. You're always trying to piece together, what does it mean to be a leader? What does it mean to be a man? What is it? You're still doing it. When you're a kid, you're doing it. When you're in your teens, you're doing it. I think most people can attest to the fact that most young men can attest to the fact that you're always looking for a blueprint on what to be, how to be consistent, how to show up for your family, how to do this stuff. And one thing I've learned from Masai Ujiri is don't get emotional about stuff. Don't be too emotional about your own pieces. Don't think that everyone's going to think the way that you're going to think. He had a vision that this is what Pascal is worth. This is what this guy's worth. But he also wanted to do it his way. He wanted his return. He wanted to send them to the perfect destination. That's not the way things are going to work. You're going to have to play hardball. You're going to have to consider what the other team wants too. And you might have to make some concessions. And you might have to compromise your morals a little bit and tell Pascal, listen, shit, I'm sorry, bro. You're going to Atlanta. I'm sorry. Fred, I'm sorry. This is a contract year for you. I appreciate the championship. We've paid you very well. We've made you very wealthy. We gave you an opportunity. We developed your ass. We gave you G League reps. And you know what? We won a championship with you. Congratulations. But also, by the way, we're trading your ass to Milwaukee because we know you're walking. And we're not going to pay you $40 million. And we know you're looking for that. And we also know that you're fucking sabotaging our team culture right now. And we know that you're hunting for your contract right now because you don't want $30 million. You realize Fred VanVleet destroyed this for $30 million versus $40 million. And who are you to count and who am I to count what $10 million means? But Masai Ujiri should know that, right? Thing is that we tend to forgive things that map out with our own assertion of values. Maybe Masai Ujiri, ambitious guy, wildly, ambitious beyond his wildest dreams. He probably looks at these guys like mini entrepreneurs, mini versions of himself, and says, you know what? I would do the same thing here. I don't know, to give you a concluding thought, who made the good decisions and who made the bad decisions in this organization. This is an organization of 100 people. Like, honestly, there's scouts, international scouts, domestic scouts, college scouts, pro scouts. There's Masai, there's Bobby, there's Jeff Weltman. There was Jeff Weltman, Patrick Matumbo. There's the entire coaching staff. We hear how much Bobby Webster said that's a Darko question. How instrumental do you think Darko has been in these draft picks over the last 3 years? I would say very instrumental. Since he's come, they've leaned on him a lot. What about his assistants? What about Jama? Are they taking input? What about Scottie? I feel like this is how you have to view teams. They are a very large organization with a lot of voices. And, I look at losing Masai, losing Teresa, and I think people have a loss aversion thing. They don't want to lose anything. They're just like, we lost something. We must have lost something great. Maybe this is like Denver. Tim Conley, Calvin Booth, where that double-headed monster of those two guys, one guy has one skill, the other guy has the other skill. Calvin is more of the scout. Conley is more of the analytics guy and the more analytical thinker. And together, they're perfect, right? Okay. Or maybe this isn't like that at all. Because in Denver, when you took one of those guys out, because the Cronkies are super cheap, you took one of those guys out of the situation and assumed that Calvin could just do the job that the two guys were doing, and he hasn't. He hasn't done the same job. Maybe he hasn't traded Jokic, and he hasn't traded the entire skeleton that won them a championship, but he lost what other parts won them the championship. I don't actually think Calvin Booth did a terrible job. I don't. So if I had to pick between the scout and the analytics guy in that case, I think they're both very valuable, but obviously two were better than one. And maybe we'll find a very similar thing with Masai and Bobby, that they were yin and yang. We didn't win a championship without Bobby Webster either. We certainly don't win a championship. We don't make that Spurs deal without Bobby Webster. That Spurs deal is what most of y'all really clamor onto and hold on to. But maybe we wouldn't have held on to Pascal without Masai. Maybe we don't overpay these guys without Masai. Maybe, I don't know, maybe we trade Fred VanVleet to Milwaukee if it's Bobby Webster's call, but Masai can't do it. Maybe we trade Pascal to Sacramento and say, fuck it, I don't care. We're getting the best return here if it's Bobby Webster. I don't know. I'm going to tell you, I don't know Bobby Webster. I've never met Bobby Webster in my life. I've passed by him. I've never shook his hand. I've never met him. But listening to his interviews strikes me as a little bit less emotional. And maybe that could be a good thing. He's had 8 years to learn from Masai. 9 years, 10 years, 11 years. He's had a long time to learn from Masai. He's had a long time to learn. Hopefully he learned well on how to treat people well. I'm not too concerned that this means we're going to trade Scottie, although that wouldn't be the shocking. Like, I wouldn't be like, wow, I can't believe that happened. I doubt it, though. Masai is a big Scottie guy, but so is Bobby. And as long as Bobby's here, I'm not panicking. And I'm curious to see what this team is going to look like going forward. I wasn't thrilled with their draft. I'm going to lay that out there. There's a reason I'm, going to be covering the San Antonio Spurs as well next year, is because I wasn't thrilled with their draft, and I haven't been thrilled. I wasn't thrilled with their draft 2 years ago, and I haven't really been thrilled with some of the decisions they've made. But, you look at a guy like RJ Barrett right now, I think Masai and Bobby see him very differently. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think Bobby Webster sees RJ Barrett in the same way. So right now, I think what this means for the Raptors is the Raptors are open for business. I think that this means that Bobby Webster is in charge, and until further notice. And I think that maybe, just maybe, and I'm not sure about this, I'll be curious to see how teams feel dealing with Bobby Webster. Because again, there's been some notions that teams don't like to deal with Masai. He's always stubborn and he's very hard-headed about things, and maybe he's a little difficult to deal with. And we've heard these reports for years and years and years, and obviously very pleasant guy, but he's King Alpha, right? I think Bobby might be a little bit more finesse about things. So we'll see. Maybe, maybe teams will have an easier time dealing with Bobby Webster. Maybe he'll be a little less unreasonable about the picks and stuff. Because again, when you start out asking for the world and you walk away with Haiti, you've lost that deal. And that's really what it is, right? You start out the negotiation. We want 5 first-round picks for Pascal Siakam. We want 3 first-round picks for OG Anunoby, et cetera. when you walk away with 3 poor firsts, you've lost that negotiation because other teams kind of just waited you out. They waited you out. And I get the feeling from listening to, honestly, the only thing I've ever questioned about Bobby Webster, frankly, is that quote about Fred VanVleet, how can you ask a NBA champion to tank? I wonder if that was sarcastic sometimes. Like when I think about that, like 2 times a day, honestly, that quote, how could you ask an NBA champion to tank when we got bounced out of the play-in? And I I wonder if that was just one of those things where he was just letting us know that this is how I feel. But I also wonder if that's one of those things where he was letting us know that this is what I was up against, bro. Like I wanted to make the move, but how can you ask an NBA champion a champion to tank? I hope Bobby does well. I wish him well. I hope the Raptors do well. I am most concerned about Ulrich, to be honest, because Joe Tuma said last year that he had told Ulrich, as long as Masai's there in Toronto, you'll be well. I'm thinking about his quote from draft night. I want to make Masai proud. I I hope this is not, something that signals him and his future being up in jeopardy or whatever. I hope he wasn't just a Masai guy. I hope that, Bobby Webster can also see the tremendous value of Ulrich. He's really one of my favorite Raptors. I love him. JMO, etc. But, we're going to see. We're going to see in the trades in the coming weeks how Bobby Webster really feels about RJ, how Bobby Webster really feels about, these other guys. I've always felt like maybe Masai Ujiri loved Scottie and Bobby Webster really liked Scottie. I don't know. Like when Masai talks about Scottie, he's like he's talking about his son. So that to me is like one of those things where I'm like, I don't know. Like, would Bobby Webster, I think like you can probably toss the Giannis stuff out now for at least now because all the Giannis connection and all that stuff. And maybe the only good thing that can come of this is that now when there's an African prospect in the draft, I don't have to listen to, well, the Raptors are obviously going to pick him. I don't have to listen to that bullshit anymore. Not that that was ever the case. Anyways, I got to get out of here. I'm sure I'll have more thoughts about this later. I'm going to do a video breakdown of Colin Murray Boyles, Elijah Martin, etc. I've slept on the picks. I like the picks a little bit more today than I did yesterday. I'm still thinking Carter and Maxine, right? I'm not moving off of that, but I'm cautiously optimistic that the Raptors found real dogs, and hopefully, what this draft signals is, or the last 2 draft signals is the Raptors are going for defense. I actually shared this post on X, and I'm going to share this as a kind of final thing with y'all. Just out of here. Sorry, guys. Give me 1 sec. I got to jump on the panel in like 2 minutes, and I have not made my coffee, so this is me definitely going a little bit overtime here. I apologize to the Players Choice community right now, but yeah, hang on. I just wanted to share this as my last thing here. Fuck, where are we? Everything's Masai on my timeline right now. But my timeline yesterday, I was thinking a lot. So this is 7 hours ago. I'm going to be covering the Spurs next season alongside the Raptors. I joked with my girlfriend this morning that I left before Masai. Like I left right before Masai, but I'm not leaving. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. Here we go. Where the hell is it? Did some analytics breakdown. Where is it? Sorry, guys. Also, if you're not following us on X, this might be a nice time to tell you should follow us on X. I had I think I tweeted up quite a storm here. So quick fun facts: Colin Murray Boyles is 31 days older than BJ Edgecombe, 170 days older than Carter Bryant, and 165 days younger than Derek Queen. I feel like a lot of people think of him as a second-year player. He is a second-year player, but he's very young. Some little random factoids for you. These are the players that have actually worn number 12 in Raptors history. And none of them were all-stars and none of them were good. So maybe Colin Murray Boyles will be the first one. I'm certainly rooting for him. And oh my God, I cannot let go of this Carter thing, man. Especially when I listened to the Spurs say today, Brian Wright came out yesterday and said, we were trying to move up to get him. We were trying to move up to get him. We didn't know that he would be there at 14. We tried our best to move up to get him and we were shocked, etc. Okay. So I wanted to share the box plus minus, and this is not a comparative stat necessarily, but this is interesting to note that these are the box plus minus of past Raptor picks recently. This is what the Raptors have done, and David Johnson being the worst, which is, probably smart because he totally didn't work out. DeJuan Hernandez, Delano Banton, AJ Lawson. I mean, there's not a draft pick, but this is a guy the Raptors invested in, Jacoby Walter. I'll mention that Buster's Pinus obviously is going to be impacted by age, draft age, position, etc. a little bit, but you see Jamal Shed, Colin Murray Boyles, Jonathan Mobo as the three tops on this list. And Mobo's context is important because he didn't play in the strongest conference, so those numbers are a little bit inflated. Koloko, low minutes, big man, limited role, little, it's harder to do this as a guard. But you look at Chucky Hepburn and Elijah Martin, and you really think to yourself, did the Raptors really just cook up in this draft and nobody cares because these guys are undersized guards? So, we'll see. We'll see. I'm cautiously optimistic. I'm looking forward to Summer League. I'm going to have y'all covered for sure. I think I'm landed on the beautiful game as the Spurs podcast. I think I'll work on the graphics for that this weekend, and maybe I can do a little bit of Spurs coverage and Raptors coverage because, we saw Samson Folk do the Indiana Pacers and the Toronto Raptors this year. Leo Bias, my good friend Leo over in Sacramento, covered the Raptors and the Kings when the Kings weren't very good. I expect the Raptors to be good, but I also expect the Spurs to be good. It'd be kind of cool to cover two good teams this year. So I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, I'll say RJ Barrett, far, far, far more likely to be moved today than he was yesterday. I'll talk to y'all later. Enjoy your day. Don't panic too much. We don't know what this means entirely, but obviously this is not a good day in Raptorland. So feel free to grieve. It's perfectly normal. Feel free to, but don't ruminate. Don't panic. And don't think that you lost, like, you may have lost an irreplaceable leader and a personality and the reputation and all that stuff. But in terms of basketball performance, I would say if I had to grade out every single team from top to bottom in terms of roster performance and everything over the last 5 years, I would say the Raptors are in the bottom half of the league. That's how I feel. I'll talk to y'all later, man. Have a great one.